I thank you all for joining me on this journey that is the OurView Podcast. I premiered the podcast in June of this year, and the goal was to share more about myself, my story, my life of living with spina bifida, and also to share the stories of others who live with disabilities, their life experiences, their challenges, and their triumphs. I am excited for what is to come for OurView and this podcast in 2021. I already have my first guest booked for January, and I will be making that announcement soon. Disability is defined as a physical or mental condition that limits a person's movements, senses, or activities. This means that a mental health diagnosis by a doctor in itself is enough for someone to say they have a disability, as long as it limits one of the person's movements, senses, or activities. While my previous episodes of the podcast have focused strictly on physical disabilities, I wanted to utilize this last episode of the year to address mental health, not just how it impacts those with physical disabilities, but how it impacts all communities. Something important worth mentioning is that those who have been diagnosed with a physical disability, that is something that impairs their vision, mobility, cognitive function, or hearing, according to an article by Healthline.com from earlier this year, they are more likely to experience depression and suicidal ideation due to risk factors like abuse, isolation, and poverty. Another risk factor for increased diagnosis of depression within the community of physical disabilities are a lack of strong social relationships. Gratefully and humbly, I have not had severe instances with depression, anxiety, or any other mental health diagnosis. Yes, I have experienced times of sadness and anxiety that were related to my disability diagnosis, but I let those moments happen. I acknowledge them, and thankfully for me, they do not last too long before they pass. However, as I am recording this intro, it is Tuesday, November 3rd, and I think that we all can agree that 2020 has been a year to remember. It's had its own unique set of circumstances that have challenged us in ways that we have never experienced before. I've celebrated with friends and close family who gave birth to babies. I've cried with family and friends who have lost relatives and friends to death, the COVID-19 pandemic, sheltering at home. The list can go on and on about the many ups and downs, positives and negatives of the year 2020. Again, I say humbly and gratefully that through it all, my friendships and relationships have remained strong, and in some cases, they have even grown stronger. The support I have had throughout my entire life has continued throughout this year and has been a big part in helping me stay positive. This last episode of our first season of the OurView Podcast is unique compared to the other episodes in that it is broken down into two parts. In the first part, which you are about to listen to, I welcome my guest, Jeanette Mockness. In this portion of the episode, Jeanette tells us her story of living with mental health diagnoses. This is a content warning. Throughout this episode, my guest and I discuss topics related to self-harm. This topic is not intended to offend or to be a trigger for anyone. Jeanette has graciously chosen to share her story and her experience, and for that, I am extremely grateful. As always, we advise our listeners and subscribers to take care and to stay safe.
Hey everyone, my name's Jeanette Mockness, and on this episode of the OurView Podcast, I'm going to share my story. In this episode, you're going to hear mention of some medical terminology that includes major depressive disorder, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, obsessive-compulsive disorder, and borderline personality disorder. Try and say that 5 times fast, right? But for the listeners who are unfamiliar with these diagnoses, I want to provide a brief definition of each. Anxiety disorder. With anxiety disorder, there's feelings of worry, anxiety, of course, or fear that are strong enough to interfere with one's daily activities. Major depressive disorder. With major depressive disorder, or MDD, there's persistent and intense feelings of sadness for an extended period of time. OCD, or obsessive compulsive disorder. With that, it's a disorder marked by fearful ideas and ritualistic behaviors, with obsessions being repetitive thoughts or impulses. Although the thoughts are intrusive and unwanted, the person with OCD cannot stop them. Compulsions are repetitive behaviors people with OCD feel compelled to perform in an attempt to control or decrease the anxiety created by the obsessions. PTSD, or post-traumatic stress disorder. This is a disorder in which a person has difficulty recovering after experiencing or witnessing a terrifying event. Symptoms of this disorder may include nightmares or unwanted memories of that trauma, avoidance of situations that bring back memories of the trauma, heightened reactions, anxiety, or depressed mood. And last but not least, borderline personality disorder. This is a disorder that's characterized by unstable moods, behavior, and relationships. Symptoms include emotional instability, feelings of worthlessness, insecurity, impulsivity, and impaired social relationships.
Thank you so much for, for joining me for this episode. I really appreciate it. So for my podcast, I have all of my previous episodes, I've highlighted people with physical disabilities and talked about their stories and what they're doing in life. And that's really why I started the podcast, just with everything going on and just the tough time that a lot of people have faced. I wanted to wrap up the year with an episode that focuses on mental health and awareness of mental health and just how people can recognize, what types of diagnoses are out there like depression, and recognize when they're experiencing some things, although it does look different for everybody. But just to shed some light on it, because I feel I majored in psychology in college, and it's still, mental health is still something that people don't know much about. They don't talk about it. And I wanted to give a chance to someone, to yourself, to, share your story and just to let people know that, it's okay. And, and it's really, it's a real thing, and that people live with it every day, and people, and how it affects certain people.
Yeah, I love that because you see now everybody is struggling. I actually had my brother message me a couple months ago and was like, I'm so sorry that you have to deal with this every day.
Mm-hmm.
Because being at home and being stuck in the same place and certain things that weren't happening, jobs and things that you normally do that keep your mind at bay weren't happening. So people that had never experienced depression before or any sort of mental health disorder or anything that really affected their daily lives started to affect it. So
right.
I'm super happy to be here, super happy to talk about it.
Yes. Yeah. So if you could, just talk about, who you are, introduce yourself, and just, tell your story as much as you would like.
So I'm Jeanette Machnes, and I am 34 years old. I have my own photography business, and then I'm also like a marketing executive, marketing specialist during the day. So it's a full-time job, and then the weekends are photography. And then I also, in 2017, started a nonprofit, which is sort of great. That has been put on hold. It was for the homeless. That has been put on hold because of COVID, of course. In high school, my sophomore year, my older brother passed away unexpectedly. And then senior year, my father passed away. So it was a lot of heavy stuff at such a young age. And at that time, I thought to myself, okay, I'm just sad because these things happened to me. And you go to your regular doctor at that time. It was probably still my childhood doctor. And he was like, okay, I'm going to put you on, at the time it was Zoloft. And I said, okay, went off to college, and something was off with me, right? I just didn't feel right, but I couldn't put it into words what I was feeling. And then my sophomore year of college, I was speaking to, and I think this is where everything really just got set into motion as far as my mental health goes. I was speaking to my best friend at the time, and he said, oh, I have this class tomorrow. They're going to be talking about abuse. I'm not comfortable with it because it's not something my parents ever spoke to me about. I was very sheltered, all this stuff. So I was like, listen, just go to the class. If you're uncomfortable, get up and leave, and then you can explain it to the professor later on. After I had that conversation with him, I started having these really, really terrible nightmares about my brother, my older brother who passed away, who I was very, very close with, him molesting me as a child. And I couldn't quite wrap my head around it. It didn't make sense. I thought it was just a dream, but they kept coming, So, and I'll remember it. I messaged my mom and I on AIM when AIM was a thing. And now that I look back on it, I probably shouldn't have messaged her because that's probably not something a mom wants to hear. But I said, hey, Mom, did Jason molest me as a child? And she said, yes. So that made a lot of sense for certain things in my life. There were certain things that I did, and I'll go into it a little bit later, that this explained why I did it. So once I found that out, I had a really, really difficult time, and I tried to kill myself with my Zoloft and like a bunch of aspirin that was in my dorm room. The moment I did it, I panicked. Told my roommate, told one of my really good friends. They took me to the hospital. Luckily, it wasn't enough to really cause any damage. They gave me the charcoal stuff, and I was an adult, but they said, you can call your mom. I called my mom. My other brother, Eric, picked up, and I said, Eric, like, I'm gonna tell mommy, like, I just, tried to kill myself. I'm in the hospital, all this stuff. It wasn't just traumatic because of what I learned and because of, my attempt at suicide. It was traumatic the way people treated me after, right? I get called into the school. That they called me in, and they basically had interviewed all my roommates and my roommates' parents without even asking me about it. They interviewed them. And we're like, do you feel like she's a harm to you? Blah, 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 blah. And no, not a harm to us. But the school basically treated me very unkindly. Like I was some really awful human being that was going to do something terrible in the school. At that point, I had a 3.9 GPA. I had no trouble at school. I didn't have anything on my record. So it was, you go to therapy or you're out of the school.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And to hear that when you are already struggling, but you're doing so great at school and you're really keeping up with everything, and then you're like, wow, okay, so that's the case. So I ended up going to therapy, and I want to preface this with, this is not everybody's experience with therapy, but I went, and they decided that I needed 2 therapists, both of which were completely opposite the other. So it was very uncomfortable to sit in there with one therapist telling me one thing, one therapist telling me the other thing. It was not helpful. And then they had my mom come in, and my mom and I were really, really, really close. Like, she was my favorite human being in the entire universe. Sadly, she passed away last year, but she came in, and I really want people to listen to this part too, because I think it'll help them understand what their parents or their loved ones are thinking. We sit down, and the therapist asks her straight out, why do you think Jeanette tried to kill herself? And my mom's response was for attention. I'm telling you right now, that was the most painful thing my mother has ever said. Years later, 10 plus years later, she apologized. And she explained to me, and I didn't get it at the time, right? At the time, you're like, that's my mother. Like, she really thinks that way. So then you go back in your shell of everything's okay because people just think I'm doing this, for the show of it all or attention. And she later told me she said that because she couldn't comprehend that her daughter was hurting so much and there was nothing she could do about it. And from that point on, I was very open with her about everything. I would call her, and of course she'd be sad about it. And everybody is, right? So as humans, we want to fix people. You want everything to be okay, or you really want something tangible to say, all right, well, this can be fixed, this can be fixed. Unfortunately, with mental illness, that's just not the way it works. So I stopped going to those therapists about a year after. Studied abroad in Australia, was really wonderful in Australia, had a great time. Was probably the best I've ever been. And I look back on that often and think to myself, like, if I didn't have family here, I would have stayed there. Things were okay. Why they were okay? I think just because I pushed everything down. Because the moment that I told my therapists about my brother, their response was, you have to be mad at him for what he did to you. Now, my brother was my best friend. He was older. I looked up to him. I wanted to be like him. Everything he did, I wanted to do. He played guitar. I want to play guitar. I couldn't be mad at him because I wasn't able to confront him about it, right? There was no, hey, Jason, why did you do this to me? And there was also, how are you supposed to be mad at somebody that A, has passed away, and B, you loved so much? So at that point, I didn't bring it up until about 4 years ago. So in between that time, I knew I had depression. I knew I had anxiety. Those were, I was diagnosed with those. Then the 4 years ago, when I was in the bathtub hysterically crying and saying, I just don't want to do this anymore. And I started therapy. My therapist said, on our first intake, she said on the form, it was like, is there any, sexual abuse in your history? And I said yes, but on the form I wrote, don't want to talk about, that wasn't what I was going for, right? Mm-hmm. So we started, and she's very much, she was like, I'm not your traditional therapist. I'm not going to sit here and, she's like, I'm not for everybody. And here's the thing, and this hits home. Because of my terrible experience with my first therapists, I did not want to go back. But what I've learned is therapy is like finding someone that you're going to marry, right? You go on all these dates, some of them don't work out. Why don't they work out? I don't know, it just doesn't fit. Your personalities don't fit. The way that they talk to you doesn't make you feel comfortable, right? So I sat down with my therapist now, and I was like, this is it. Like, I knew from the get-go, like, this is going to be the one. So I just want to say that because a lot of people that I've spoken to also are very much like, I don't want to go to therapy. I tried it once, it didn't work. And I get that mindset, right? I get it 100% because I was there. But then I'm able to say, okay, I was there. I gave it, however many years. Now I'm back at it, and I can't see my life without it. Like, I honestly think everybody should have a therapist, just to have somebody to talk to that has no connection to anything else that's happening in their life. Right. Even if you're not mentally ill, everybody can really benefit from it. So I started going to this therapist about 4 years ago, and she said she had diagnosed me major depressive disorder, anxiety, and at the time PTSD, given the situation with my brother. So she made it very clear that it was going to be harder. It was going to be hard before it got easier. And because what happens is, and she explained this to me, is your brain won't let you remember things until it believes you have the support system to handle it. So back when I remembered what had happened to me, I had the support system, I had friends, but then, I went to therapy and they sort of took that from me. They took my mom from me because of what she said. The suicide attempt took some people from me. About 4 years ago, I guess 4 years ago now, I made the choice, and it was a choice completely on my own, to be really, really open about my mental health struggles, mm-hmm. because nobody else was. So when I needed somebody to talk to, and at the time I wasn't seeing a therapist, I actually, and I'll remember it to this day, I was upstairs, I was in the bath, hysterically crying, and my husband came in and he was like, like what's wrong? And I said, I just don't want to be here anymore. Like, I knew there was something, and I had felt these things before, but this was something more. So I decided, that night we decided I would find a therapist. And that was basically like my last ditch effort, right? It was either this works or it doesn't. Luckily, I am here 4 years later. I just had a therapy appointment on Monday night, so I am still here. So through therapy, I also was diagnosed with OCD and borderline personality disorder. So it's just like a plethora. I basically have everything under the sun. But I decided that moment when I went to therapy, I am going to be super, super open about my mental health issues. And I'm not talking about sharing a meme, right? People do that. You can do that. You can share the suicide phone number, and that's still great. Don't get me wrong. But I was to the point of, hey guys, I was diagnosed. This is my diagnosis. This is how I'm feeling today. If anybody needs anything or they need to talk, you're not alone. You can come talk to me. And this is, social media right now is great for that. People can diss it as much as they want, but I've had more people than I can count that have messaged me or called me or emailed me or texted me about it, because they realize these feelings that I'm having, other people feel them too. Do they feel them the exact same way? No. But just for a little backstory, I had gone into my therapist one day. I knew at this point it was depression, it was anxiety, it was PTSD. I went into my therapist and I said, I'm having a little problem. Like, I feel like there's a voice inside me. It's not like a random voice, it's my voice. I started going, and this is going to sound a little ridiculous, but I went to, and I'll remember it, I went to the Quick Check to get a Gatorade, and the voice inside my head, which was me, was saying, you need to pick the blue one or something terrible is going to happen. And that continuously started happening. I would be driving behind a car somewhere and it would be like, you have to stay behind this car or something awful is going to happen to your mom. And this was consistent. So I brought it up to my therapist, and my therapist is like, oh, well, that's OCD. It's invasive thoughts. It's part of OCD. And I thought to myself, you think OCD and you think people are cleaning. People are constantly putting things where they need to be, because as a society, we use those terms so freely, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness, I'm obsessive compulsive over this, or oh my gosh, I'm so depressed. Oh, I'm crazy. So you get this mindset of that's what it looks like, without realizing that society has made mental health something sort of, I don't want to say a badge of honor, but they make it seem like it's a trend, right? So I started on medication for that, and it's a constant battle with that, to tell myself those thoughts nothing's going to happen, right? Like, if you pick the other Gatorade, it's not going to happen. And there's like little times where I'll feel confident enough to pick up something, pick up the red one, go home, realize nothing happened, and be okay. But then there's other times where I am literally besides myself, because I'm like, I just decide, like, something's going to happen if I don't do this. Like, it's not great. So then one time I was in therapy, and my therapist mentioned, I was talking about something, and she was like, oh, well, that's how borderline people usually react. And I was like, well, who has borderline? She was like, you do. And I was like, no, like, she was like, we haven't discussed this. And I was like, nope, definitely didn't discuss this. And if you know anything about mental health, or, maybe you don't even need to know it, borderline personality disorder is villainized. I left therapy the moment she told me, in tears, because I was like, I'm done. I don't want to do this right now. And I left. I came home, and for weeks, I Googled borderline personality disorder, and everything that pops up talks about us being manipulative and, in general, just really terrible people. And I didn't go back to therapy for a couple weeks because I couldn't get my head wrapped around that I was being categorized as someone that was manipulative or terrible, or because in my mind, and the people in my life's minds, like the people that I spoke with, they're like, you're the furthest thing from that. Mm-hmm. And that's when I really realized that everybody's symptoms show up differently. And that a lot of what I had done since I was a kid was borderline personality disorder, and it stems from, a lot of borderlines stem from trauma in their childhood. So all of a sudden, everything started coming together. She read there's a list out there of however many, and I think I was like one beneath the total. So if it was like 31, I was 30 that I can relate to. So that's something as simple as, I take really, really hot baths, right? I don't like water coming down on my face. I don't like sand. These are all things that make absolutely zero sense, but have been recognized as borderline personality disorder habits. Self-harm is one. I am a self-harmer. Just so everybody knows, that isn't and this is a misconception too, is when we self-harm, or the majority of people self-harm, I don't want to speak for everyone, we're not doing it to end our lives. That's not the point. The point is, you have control over it, and it's like a release, right? So it's basically the same as screaming at the top of your lungs, but just instead of, it's a physical release and an emotional release. So yeah, so I started being super, super open about everything. I decided the year that I started therapy that every year, so there's a Society for Suicide Prevention, a Foundation for Suicide Prevention, AFSP, American Foundation, whatever it is, right? They do a overnight walk every year, and they raise money for suicide prevention. So you all meet, thousands of people get together, and you basically overnight walk 18 miles in the dark till dawn. And there's a big celebration at the end and all this stuff. So I decided that every year that I survived, that would sort of be my celebration, right? I would go and I would walk with all these people that have experienced loss or have experienced suicidal thoughts themselves. And the first year, my mom decided actually that she wanted to walk with me. So she had to raise money as well. And I remember her, I wish I could still find it, you write out a page about why you're doing it. Mm-hmm. And she wrote out about how she years ago said something very hurtful because she didn't understand. And now, because I'm so open about it, she understands it so much more. She wants to be there. Sadly, given her health, she wasn't able to do it. So my husband jumped in, and it really was wonderful. People are often like, how do you do it, right? And that's not just, it's how do you do that from everything you've experienced in life, and how do you do that with your mind being so cruel? And sadly, my mind is extra cruel. I am chronically suicidal. to the point every day I wake up and it's at least a thought once, right? And that's not to say I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm gonna, I have a plan. It's just that is always an option for me. So for me, I have to work 10 times harder to get out of bed, right? And be productive. But what I found is, for me personally, being productive is so very important. And it's because then my mind can't tell me all these awful things about myself, right? Like, I don't hear, that I'm terrible, or that nobody loves me, or that, the world would be better off without me. I don't hear those things. I hear, okay, I have this to do for work. I have this to do for photography. I have this book to read. And always being productive is really, really beneficial for me, as well as being really good with your medication. I am on 4 medications, and you can, the moment you stop taking them, first off, don't ever, I don't know who's listening to this, but don't ever just go cold turkey. It is not good. It could actually cause really, really serious harm. So please don't do it, even if you're feeling, what a lot of people do is they start feeling better and they say, then I don't need this, right? Not realizing the medication is why you're feeling better. So keep doing it. Keep doing everything you're doing that makes you feel better. And I really think that connecting with other people and being someone that people can come to. So for instance, I had a high school friend come to me a couple weeks ago, and my mom's first anniversary of her death was coming up, and she said, listen, I know you're going through a lot, but my mom called me and basically said, I can't do this anymore, hung up the phone. The cops had to find her. They put her in a suicide hold. She won't talk to any of the family. She doesn't trust them, but she trusts you. Would you mind speaking to her? So yeah, I'm going to talk to her. You know what I mean? I don't care if I have 8 million things on my plate. If somebody needs to talk about mental health with me, I will give up anything I'm doing, for the simple fact that it is still so stigmatized, which baffles me, right? The numbers of people that have depression or have anxiety are staggering. So the fact that people still can't say, I'm depressed, or I'm having a bad day, or have those feelings and openly express them, really baffles me. And I don't know what we can do as a society to get to the point where people can talk about it, where people can say, instead of me having to make up some excuse that I can't go to work, right? Some health excuse. I could easily just say, I need a mental health day. I'm taking a mental health day, without someone being like, well, you could have came into work, you could have done that. It's also super important to have a really good support system. I am 100, I am indebted to everybody that is still in my life right now, because it's ugly, right? There are days where I'll just lay in bed, I'll just cry, I'll scream, and I don't want to see anyone. I wish there were words to put what it feels like. Sadly, there aren't. Everybody describes it a different way. I know I've heard people describing it as like being in a bathtub without any water, with cold water, like, but I am super thankful that I started using my voice about it, because it's helped others, but B, that now, because I've expressed it so much, that people in my life now know the signs, right? So my husband knows if I do a certain thing that, okay, she's about to have like a major breakdown, call the therapist. My therapist knows that when I call her and say I'm not coming in today because I'm in a really bad place, that she should check on me like the next week and make sure I go to therapy the next day. I want to live in a world, right, where I can be somebody, somebody has cancer, right? Nobody judges them for it and says, this is your own fault, right? I am sick. Everybody that has a mental health issue is sick. The way that, and here's the thing too that really bothers me, and I guess this explains my comparison, is people often say, and it is, I don't get mad easily, but if somebody says this to me, I get very angry. Suicide is selfish, right? I don't believe it. I don't believe it because I've been there. First, I'm there every day. But second, if somebody has cancer and they've smoked their entire life, right, and they die of lung cancer, nobody's going to go up to their family and be like, wow, I can't believe he did this to you. That was so selfish of him. They're going to go and they're going to be, I'm so sorry for your loss. This is awful. And they're still going to remember that person fondly. If I one day decide to take my own life, I also died from a disease, right? I was not in the right mind to not take my own life. So depression, every other disease, one. So that doesn't make me any different than somebody that has a terminal illness. We are all living, if you have a mental health issue, you're living with a terminal illness on a daily basis. And it makes it worse because you're living with one that not only does society not understand, but science still has an issue understanding. They don't know why certain things happen. They've looked at brain scans, of course, and there are certain differences. But if you were to ask somebody, how does that medication work? They're not going to be able to tell you. It just does, right? Why does an SSRI work on them, but it doesn't work on me? And that's a thing, too, that really is a struggle, is the medication back and forth, right? So you can, one day something can work for me, right? It could make somebody else way worse. So the constant battle of having to figure out which medications work, and then if they don't work, you get violently ill if you're on, if you basically say, I've been on some medication, got a new job, and insurance didn't start up until, say, 30 days later. So I'm without my medication. It is akin to somebody having withdrawal from actual drugs. You get these terrible, they call them it's like a head zap, right? So it's just, I hope you never have to have it. But you get that, and you get the stomach issues, and you just get terrible headaches, and you can't function. So, you deal with that too, and it's constantly changing. So I would say every 2 years, a medication for me stops working, and you feel it, right? Or at least I feel it. I know I'm getting bad again. I know my medications stopping, and every time this happens, and it's like clockwork, I'm told by my therapist, by my friends, by my husband, go to the doctor, talk to them, get a new medication. At that point, I'm so angry that for the rest of my life, I have to take things to function like a human being. And I get angry at the people that can just get up and be happy and not have to take these. And I'm so angry that I have to go through these trials of, is this one going to work? Is this one not going to work? Can I take it with this? Can I not take it with that? To the point where I get as low as I was that day in the bathtub. I end up going to the doctor. It's fixed. But there's always a fear of, is this going to be the last time that I'm like, all right, let me try this medication again, or let me do this again, because it is so frustrating. And I think it's even more frustrating that I can be open about it now. I'm fine with it. I have I'm not embarrassed of it anymore. And that's, you know what, that's the problem, is society makes you feel embarrassed about it. And that's not, as simple as it is and as cheesy as it sounds, that's just not okay. Like, I shouldn't have to feel embarrassed about something that I have no control over and that I'm trying to get under control, you know, and I try harder than the majority of people every day to function. Luckily, I think, you know, I'm part of a lot of groups. I'm part of, you know, I've heard other people that are to the point where, like, they won't leave the house, or they're agoraphobic. I worked on a suicide hotline for a while, and, you know, you hear those stories and those people, and I'm fortunate that I am functioning, but even with that, it makes it very exhausting at the end of the day, right? So I am if people didn't know my personal story, they would think I have the best life ever. Every job that I've ever had, people are like, you bring so much joy here, you're always so happy, how are you so chipper in the morning? And it's because if I don't give that to people, then my brain is basically like, yo, bitch, you're in trouble. Like you're doomed. So, you know, in a way, I'm fortunate, certainly, but I think it took me a really, really long time to get here. I used to be ashamed. I used to be really, really embarrassed. I would take my medication where nobody could see. Now it's open on my, you know, my bedside table. Anybody that comes to the house can see it. Now my friends know, like, if they text me and I'm like, no, I have to cancel, I'm just not feeling myself today, they're okay with it, right? But I think why they're okay with it is because I've been so open, so they understand it's a mental health thing and not a bad friend thing.
Right.
Yeah, so that was a lot to throw at you. Yeah, you know, I've considered doing a podcast on mental health and all that jazz. I just think, and it's been done, people do it. I just think people need people that they relate to, right? So it's sort of like you, in your situation, I imagine that being around other people that sort of have your same struggles is comforting in a sense, right? You don't feel alone, and you feel like you have this sort of group, this circle that you can trust and talk to, and they understand it.
It is, and it's so interesting though, because I had such a large family growing up. I really didn't see anybody that was like me, though. It was the strangest thing, to the fact that on one of my episodes I put out last month, I think it was, I talked about, like, going to a camp for people with physical disabilities, and it was supposed to be a 2-week camp. I made my parents come get me after a week. You know, I don't have these same you know, things going on that, you know, more severe things that these other campers had going on. I was like, I want to come home now. Like, I didn't even want them to leave me there.
It makes sense because there's severity in everything, right?
Right.
So I remember a friend in college, it was summer break, and I guess I said something that had scared him. So all of a sudden police show up at my house, and they're like, you know, we got a call, are you going to endanger yourself? And I wasn't. Like, I can say 100% I was not going to do it. And the way they handled it to me was very archaic. It did not make me feel comfortable. I knew the police in my town. It's a very small town that I grew up in. So they knew me, they knew my family. They brought me to Bergen Pines, which I don't think it's called that anymore. And everybody knew growing up that Bergen Pines, this too, right? Everybody knew growing up, Bergen Pines was where the crazy people go, like the insane people go. So the thought that I was going there, I was like, no, like, that's not me. I have it under control. Went there. And this, I assume, see, this is why people also don't open up or trust anyone or doctors, right? Or therapists. So I went there, they sat me down, they had a conversation with me, and they were like, listen, we just want you to come back tomorrow. We're just going to talk to you about like options for therapy. So I go back the next day with my boyfriend at the time. They bring me in a room and they're like, you have a choice. We either commit you and we commit you to wherever we want to commit you in this area, or you're able to choose where you go. I didn't need to go anywhere.
Wow.
Their lack of bedside manner was atrocious. They basically just threw the option at me, said, go home and pack, and then show up whatever hospital you want to show up, or we're going to come take you out of your house. So I decided Hackensack Hospital was right by my house. They had a mental health ward. If I had to, if this was the ultimatum, I'm making the choice where I want to go. I went there and I thought exactly like you did at camp. I was like, I don't belong here. There were people in the hallway screaming and people in rooms screaming, and like no one was getting attended to. And then I got put in this room where they took all my items, to the point where they gave me like this gross turkey sandwich. Took all the you couldn't wear shoes with shoelaces, of course, given I guess the circumstances. And then they took away all the plastic cutlery and you couldn't have anything. And then a doctor came in and they were like, he's gonna like look you over, see if you have to stay, blah, blah, blah. What people don't know about mental health individuals is we're badass, right? Like we have to battle our brains every day. So if I have to sit down with a doctor and get out of staying in this hospital, I'm going to do everything I can to do it. So I'm going to lie my ass off to you when you ask me, have you had suicidal thoughts? Do I have suicidal thoughts at that moment? No. Have I? Yes. But the problem is when you say that, if somebody isn't well educated or if they don't know you, they will assume the worst and think, well, you had them once, so you are now, let's put you away and do what we have to do and, you know, see if it works. But I sincerely hope things have changed since then. This was in college, so we're talking 2005. So I haven't been, luckily I have not had to be committed in the past 15 years, but that's not to say that I don't have, of course I have moments of suicidality, and the difference is understanding each person's threshold of where their mental health lands, right? So there are days where if it's on a 1 to 10 scale, there are days that I'm a 3, there are days that I'm a 10, and my therapist says, do you have a plan? And I say no. So unless, and don't take this verbatim, but it is very accurate that if somebody says they have a plan, they are more than likely going to do it. So, which brings me to freshman year of college. So sophomore year was I attempted suicide. Freshman year, I had a psychology class. I didn't know what was happening again in my head. The doctor at home was like, well, you lost your dad, you lost your brother. So of course that's what it is, right? To me, it felt like so much more. I had started cutting probably the senior year of high school. And it got really bad freshman year of college. My psychology professor, every class, we would have to hand in a short paper afterwards, just talking about whatever. I guess, and I wish I knew what the paper said. I don't remember what it said, but I am somehow involuntarily made my psychology professor very concerned. And rightfully so. I had a plan that I was going home for Thanksgiving. I was going to spend it with my family. I was going to go back to school, and I was going to, there's a park, Valley Forge Park nearby, and I was going to kill myself there so that nobody I knew had to find me, right? I get a call over Thanksgiving break, my house number, and my mom said, "It's for you, it's your professor." And I was like, "What?" And it was my professor to tell me, just to basically say, like, someone cares. I'm getting emotional.
Mm-hmm.
And he single-handedly saved my life that Thanksgiving break. He got it, right? He knew something was wrong, and he reached out. And I think that's what scares me about mental health being so stigmatized now too, is that people are scared to ask people about it. And that's why there's so many suicides, because people are scared to say, "Are you suicidal?" Right? It's like it's a curse word that children don't want to say, when in reality, if you ask straight out, a suicidal person will not be able to say no. Like if you say, "Jeanette, are you going to kill yourself?" My brain isn't, if I'm at that point, is not going to allow me to say no. So, I just posted about it today, is about knowing the signs, right? And there's so many different signs. There's the giving away of things. There's also, and this one is sort of scary, but there's also, if someone has been in such a bad place and you know they've been in a bad place, and the next day you talk to them and they are so happy and so chipper and everything's great, be really concerned. Because at that point, they were so down that they made this plan, and in their head, everything's going to be better once they kill themselves, right? Their life is going to be better. There's the hygiene. Luckily that, again, it's different for everybody. Luckily that is, not an issue with me. I enjoy, being clean for me is important, but for other people, you just can't get out of bed to do it. Something as simple as, someone's daily movements, as silly as it sounds, if I don't make the bed in the morning, my husband knows something's completely wrong. And that, again, it's something so simple, but it's something that I do daily, that I'm so concerned that this bed has to look nice, that the moment those things stop happening is the moment that I don't care anymore.
I think one of the many important things that you said, it's just to have conversations with people, to really talk to people, to really ask them how they are doing and actually listen to them and hear them. And just, it's such a shame, even when you first, in the beginning, when you first started talking of the things that you found about the different diagnoses online, and just the examples that are given to describe certain mental illnesses, with depression or bipolar disorder or a borderline. And it's just it makes you, it makes you kind of like scared, like, oh no, like I don't have that, that's not me.
Yeah.
But it's different for everybody, and it's just so important to talk to people, and to really, especially like through this last year, everybody has been, people have lost their jobs and all kinds of things, and because of their jobs, they've lost their homes, and
it's terrible.
It is, and it's just so important to, reach out to people and to talk to people, and again, to listen to them and hear them, what they're saying, and just just to be there for people. I'm so glad that you were willing to share your story with me, and we have a mutual friend, and we're meeting here for the first time through through a Zoom call. But it's just like your story just really really is important to share. And I'm glad that you're willing to share that, because as you see on the news that the numbers of people with depression and suicides and everything have gone up in the last year. It's still something very uneasy for people to talk about, unfortunately. And it's just, we have to make it a more common thing to talk about with ease, and not the embarrassment that people may feel with it, as you expressed as well. It's just hard to really get that, to get through that, I think, for a lot of people and society as a whole. Even though you see all the commercials for, the medications and things. And
don't even get me started on those commercials. I am not a sad little ball hopping around.
Right.
You know what? Like, no, that doesn't, that does not happen. Those commercials, they make me a little irate, especially because I worked in pharmaceutical advertising, and I know what it's like, how in depth you have to get to those commercials. So the fact that people let that get through, I'm like, wait a second, that's not right. But like you said, have a conversation and stop and really hear what someone is saying. Like, how freeing would it be if you were having a crappy day and somebody does the normal, like you're at the office, oh, hey, how are you? How was your weekend? It was crappy. It was pretty bad. Not loving it. Instead of being like, oh no, it was cool. Like, just hung out. Like, if people were just honest about what they're feeling, I think then people would be honest about what they themselves are feeling. And for
Right.
me, it's been a beautiful thing to see my friends or, and people on Facebook that I'm connected to really start opening up about it, right? So there's Suicide Awareness Month, and there's Suicide Prevention Day, and there's, every month, Mental Health Awareness Month, depression, blah, 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 and more people are posting about it. So while I can sit here and be like, wow, it's still stigmatized, compared to where it was when I was in college, is leaps and bounds better. Is it where I want it to be? No. But I can see the people in my circle being more open about it and reaching out to me and reaching out to other people. And there's even people that I've never met, that I've met through like social media groups, that I consider really good friends, because at my worst days, I can message them and say, at least I did laundry today, and they get it, right? To a normal person, that's like, all right, well, you did laundry. No, to me, that's huge, because I couldn't even get out of bed yesterday.
Right.
So even just, complete strangers become friends because you have something in common. And I think that's what more of the world needs, really, is to just understand that everybody has something. So just, guys, and it sounds so simple, right? To be kind, right? It sounds so simple, but people have such a hard time doing it.
They do.
And I just don't get it. And, I have people reach out to me all the time. You're so strong for telling, your story. You're so strong for being what you've been through. And like, I don't see it that way, right? I am not posting these things to make it seem like I am this woman that can overcome anything. No, I'm posting this so that the other people know that they can overcome it, right?
Mm-hmm.
When it's very difficult for someone with mental illness to deal with things in general, but like when really bad things happen, it's scary for us, and it's scary for the people around us, right? And I say that to anybody that's listening that does have mental illness, so for instance, when my mom passed away, she passed away last year. She was, when I say the most incredible human being in the world, she was the most selfless person. She was everything to me. It was my biggest fear to lose my mother. Everybody that's close to me knew that. Everybody knew how close we were. So the moment it happened, there were text messages coming in. I'm worried about you. Are you going to be okay? It doesn't help that I did tell people that if my mom dies, I'm going to off myself like the next day. So probably wasn't beneficial for people to hear. But reaching out like that from people that knew I would be struggling meant the world, right? And it didn't have to be a long thing. It was just a simple, hey, how are you doing? Hey, if you need to talk. And that's what a lot of people come to me and they say, listen, I'm talking to somebody that is suffering. Actually, like 2 weeks ago, I got a message and was like, my 13-year-old cousin is struggling with suicidal thoughts. Like, what am I supposed to say to them? And I said, well, what are you saying to them now? And she was like, I talk to them like normal. And then I'm like, hey, if you need to talk, like, I'm here. I said, that's what you need to do, right? So don't handle us like we're fragile, right? We're not fragile. I'm sure people like treat you with like kid gloves.
Right. Yeah.
Don't do that. It's really, it makes us feel sort of crummy, right? Like we can do this.
Yeah.
So just have normal conversations with them and then interdisperse, like, you matter, like, you're good. And I'm super happy because I put out so much over the past 4 or 5 years that now if I put out, I put something out today. It was a post secret about someone saying that at their work office, they would be so sad if someone committed suicide because they didn't see the signs. And the person that wrote the postcard was like, guys, I'm here. Like, these are the signs. So I put that out there and I was like, guys, let's have a conversation. Let's have real conversations, like, ask people. And one of my friends messaged me and was like, hey, just want to check in. Are you okay? I don't want to miss the signs. And that means the world, right? So do those things. They're little. We're not asking for a lot. Nobody's asking for anything except to feel like they matter, like it would matter if they weren't here. And that's just in a general sense. You know what I mean? Like, that should just be a general practice of checking in with the people you love. And if someone's struggling, just check in a little harder.
Right. Wow, that was good.
Oh,
check in a little harder. Yes, I love that. Check in a little harder.
Yeah.
That is so, and it's so true. And it goes, what you were saying of how far it's come since you were in college, 15 years ago. And you mentioned something about, if you have a job and you can just say, like, I need a mental health day, that would be great.
If the day that happens, I'm literally going to take off that day every year and be like, it happened.
Right, it happened.
Celebrate it.
It is, and it's so true because, I was telling you before, it might have been before we started recording, I was telling you, like, this morning, because it was so cold, like, my body was just aching, so it's just like, yeah, and thankfully I've always, the job that I have it's always been a work from home job, thankfully. But, I think about those kinds of things. If I had to be to work at 9 o'clock, like, it might not happen. Like, I can make it there by 10.
Yeah. And you should be able to say that, I think, for any disability, right?
Right.
You should be able to say, I need a little more time, or,
right.
I can't get in there at this time today. I remember there was a time where I was going through a difficult period, and it's tough to get out of bed, but I would get up and I would go to work and I would show up a little late. And my boss called me out on it. And I was so embarrassed about why, that I just said, okay, I got up and I left, and I made sure to, like, set my alarm for super earlier. And then I guess a couple weeks later, we had a one-on-one meeting, and I was like, listen, I just want to let you know, the reason I was late was because I wasn't doing well mentally. So I apologize for that. But I shouldn't have to apologize for that.
Right.
That should be something that I can say and say, yes, I'll do better, or I'll stay later at work, right? There should be, you just shouldn't feel punished for not feeling well.
And like you said, there shouldn't have to be an apology attached to it. Like, hey, here's what happened. And that's the end of the discussion. Here's what happened. That's why I was late. you know?
Yeah, exactly. There shouldn't, yeah, you're right. I shouldn't have to apologize for it.
Yeah.
And sadly, like, we are at that point where people are apologizing for it and they have to do it. But to be honest, if I thought back when like 2005, if I would have been here, definitely not. And B, if I would have been so open about what I'm going through, not in a million years. But I look back on it now, I would not change a single thing. I'm actually still, I'm still in touch with that professor. I found him on Facebook.
Oh, great.
So I thank him. I thank him every now and then, just saying, hey, thanks. I know my mom was very thankful. My family was very thankful. But, and I've seen what happens to people that don't have someone to talk to. I mean, my brother Jason was suicidal, and he let me know after an attempt that that's what it was, but he would not tell my mom or my father. Instead, he said, oh, I got in a car accident, whatever. And then he told me the truth. So I was aware of that stuff very early on, like freshman year, sophomore year of high school. But that too is, I don't think I never learned about it they never talked about it in grammar school. Probably because I went to a Catholic school, so they definitely did not talk about that sort of thing. In high school, they had an assembly that I remember, but aside from that, there's not much, and I'm sure I hope it's different now. A lot of pop culture address it, TV shows address it, and especially like when celebrities kill themselves, I think, and sadly this is true, I think it brings more light to it, right? Robin Williams, for instance, everybody knows, this guy, oh, but he was so funny, he was so great. Anthony Bourdain, he had everything in the world. That's the thing, it doesn't matter what you have, it's literally a disease just like anything else that can kill you. And I think people have a misunderstanding that we choose this way, right? And it's very much like, oh, well, you could be happier if you do this, or no, that's not it. It doesn't work that way. I really wish it did. Somebody's like, you could be happier if you just, if you just try. And trust me, I try everything. I have positive quotes everywhere. I say all that stuff. I do that, but it's not that simple. It sadly will never be that simple. And I just want people to not be judgmental about it. And thankfully, and here's the thing, if you are in this situation and you have people that are judgmental about it, get rid of them. It's not healthy. They're not going to help you. Be around people that love you regardless of like how happy you are or how sad you are or how much you need help. Just surround yourself with good people. It won't cure you, but it'll make things way better.
Yes, that's so true. It's our diagnoses are different. But that is the really big thing for me of surrounding myself with good people, and that really makes such a huge difference. The people that are there to support you, and the people, like you said, that just check in on you, and they'll they're really just there for you, and having the support system has really been a really, really big thing for me, that has helped me through my tough days and stuff. But
have you found your situation to make it so you do have like bad mental health days? Do you think?
Yes, sometimes, not consistently, and nothing that that lasts more than a day, like when cold days are really bad. And being in New Jersey, it can literally be 65 one day and 40 or 30 the next day, and the next morning.
It's not consistent, that's for sure.
So there's no consistent weather here in great state of New Jersey. Um,
No,
so I could be
definitely.
totally fine. And then, the next morning where everything just aches and it's just like, okay, I'll get out of bed and it really gets frustrating for me. And it's just like why are things this way? Like I could
Yeah.
just, I wish I could just get up and go. And, and even like I wear braces on my legs and use crutches and a wheelchair. And um, I met somebody for lunch outside for my birthday last week, and the waitress, she was, joking around like, "Oh, well, what took you so long?" I said, "Hey, it takes a whole lot to get this shit together and get moving."
No,
I said, "This is not just put together in seconds.
this doesn't happen overnight, lady.
No, this takes hours to pull together."
And like, that's the thing too, is I can't understand what you're going through, right? Because I'm
Right,
not in that situation.
right.
So that seems a lot easier for people to be like, okay, well, I don't understand, but I can see. That's what it is.
Yeah,
You are physically
right. Yeah,
unable, like
you
you're
can't miss me
physically
coming. Yeah, you
disabled.
can't miss it.
Yeah.
Like it's the crutches, the wheelchair. you you can't miss it. It's like all out there for you to see. It just it is, and that
You
is,
can't hide those things.
but it but it
But
really
for
is.
like,
It's just a thing of, like you said, you can see me coming. You can kind of figure out what my condition is and how it affected me. I'm in a wheelchair,
yeah,
so that must mean I have trouble walking or can't walk, or I'm using the crutches, so that must mean I have a mobility type of situation going on.
yeah.
Um, and
For
for
mental
people,
health, that's not the case. Like, you don't look at me and be like there's no fact, there's nothing on me or anything that says, okay, well, she has, depression and all of that. So, but
right,
the understanding and the respect should still be the same as someone that looks at you, can't really understand what you're going through, but empathizes with it, right? Sympathizes with it. And I think,
absolutely.
yeah, we have to be more like that too. So power to you, because you're 39 and
I,
you were not supposed to make it past 15.
yes, yes, I am. I'm grateful. It's really just, but it goes back to what I had said, like the support system of just, my large family, and having a bunch of cousins who were, my friends growing up, and living in a small neighborhood really helped me.
Yeah.
That really helped because we were able to know the families in our neighborhood, and they were able to, get to know what my condition was, what it meant, uh, how they could, how I could still be invited to parties and things because it didn't impact me in such a, an extreme way where I couldn't socialize with other kids. And it just really, it's every day I, try to, uh, like you said, be kind to people, and just do some good in the world, and just, be very grateful for, for my time here. It's just like not every day is great. Like I said, I have some
No.
pain, but that's with everybody. Not everybody has some bad day for one reason or another. And it's just, to extend that, like you said, empathy and sympathy to people, to just, to let them be. And, like if I'm having a bad day, uh, if I'm supposed to go out with people and it's just like a day where I'm not moving like I should. It happened to me um, on Thanksgiving. Actually, because of this pandemic, I haven't been wearing my braces as often as I was before.
Mhm.
So whenever I put them on, my body's kind of like, "What the hell are you doing?" Um,
Get these off.
yeah, what are these things? Get them out of here. And it's like I go to move, and like my legs just don't move, and I'm like, okay, we're supposed to, like, let's go, come on, let's
This
do
isn't happening today.
right. The funny thing about that is I can usually hide it. Not that I hide it on purpose, but I can maneuver myself enough that people don't notice, don't recognize it. I just couldn't hide it on Thanksgiving. And they saw this look on my face, and they were just like, "Whoa, what just happened?" I'm like, "Nothing." They were like, "Oh, okay, yeah, sure. Want to try again?"
Well, you know what's so funny is sitting here speaking to you is things you say. It's so, like, if you were saying it about mental health, I would hear that too, like, oh, I just, I was trying to hide it and I couldn't, and people noticed it. It's the exact same thing.
It is. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm honored to like meet you.
Yay. And once this all clears up, we will meet in person. We have to.
I'll bring you an old birthday cake. I'll tell Violet. I'll be like, Violet, we're just going to stop there, but we're going to stay more than 5 minutes.
Yes. Yeah. So we definitely will meet in person. And it's been great hearing your story, to talk to you. And, thank you again so much for just being so open. I think this is part of, this is how we start to change things. And this is why my mission of creating OurView is to educate, raise awareness, and change the tone of conversation about disability.
I love that.
And this is how we do it. We talk about it. We have to talk about it and get it out there, and put a face to it, put a real life to to all of these diagnoses, whether it's a physical disability like spina bifida, or a mental health diagnosis like depression or borderline or bipolar, or it's just
the laundry list of things.
Yeah, it's just and it's the thing of like, we're people, we love doing things, and we find out that we have more things in common than we are different. And it's just, even like you said, you're a marketing person, who, and a photographer, like, it's just, there's so much more to everyone besides their diagnosis, or in addition to their diagnosis. And it's just getting to know that, and getting to know the people who, live with these, different diagnoses, I think is the way that we really get to start changing the conversation about disabilities and mental health diagnosis, and all of that. I think is it's just so important that we have conversations and listen to people and hear them out. And so I'm very thankful to have shared this time with you, and I really look forward to meeting you in person someday soon.
Me too, and just so you know, your face is like the kindest face I've ever seen.
Oh, wow.
It's so kind.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, thank you. I've never heard that before. Wow. Well,
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah,
You're very welcome.
Thank you. I really just, like I said, I just appreciate you for sharing your story. That's why I did not interrupt you, and I just, let you talk, because it's all very important information that people need to know about. And, we need to hear more stories, and just, it makes it more real, I think, because as we see on, the TV, the commercials, or even, TV shows, I think, what's the show called? A Million Little Things, that was on.
I love that show.
I love that show. I love it.
It hits my heart every episode.
Yes, it's such a great show.
Why do I keep doing it to myself? Is my question.
It's such a great show.
Oh,
and they
so
have,
good. And they actually did it. They did everything pretty much justice, right?
Yes.
Like, I feel like they did a really good job of explaining, they didn't shy away from it by any means. And I think that's what is super important, is they're not sugarcoating it. They're not doing it. And I know people have problems with that. They had problems with 13 Reasons Why.
Yes.
But the people that had problems with 13 Reasons Why had problems with it because they've never been there. For me, it was, wow, someone gets it. Like, they understand it. But for other people, and I completely respect this, it's scary. It's a scary thing for people to understand, or to think that somebody's mind can do that to them and stuff. So, I just thank you so much for getting this out there, and anything I can do to help with your company or your mission or anything, I am here.
But I
thank
appreciate
you so much.
Thank you. And I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me, and I will definitely be in touch.
All right. Talk to you later.
All right. Have a good night.
Bye.
Thanks. Thank you for listening to this episode of the OurView Podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the OurView Podcast on Anchor, Apple Podcast, or Spotify. New episodes will be released on the 15th and 30th of every month. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube at OurView for Life. That's OurView, the number 4, LIFE. Do you want to help change the tone of conversation among your family and friends? Head over to our website for some OurView merchandise. Our website is www.our-view.com/merchandise. I thank you for listening. Have a great day and take care.